Well, we have Mariana Henninger with us today, and I'm very excited because the first time I've got an Emmy Award winner on our show, not just once, but she's been nominated twice as well. She's a documentary filmmaker who speaks 5 languages, count them, and has traveled and worked in 4 continents. She's the founder of brandmagnetic.com, and she empowers entrepreneurs to build trust faster and accelerate sales with emotion-driven brand videos. So I could go on and have just a whole session just on your background because it's very exciting and very interesting. But I think let's just start it off with a hi.
Hi, great to be here.
So when we talk brand videos, not branded videos, as I made a mistake earlier when we were chatting, I work in branding, so I understand the power of it, but I'd love to hear from somebody who's actually responsible for helping people create brand videos and get their voice out there. What got you into this? Give us the
Yeah,
10,000 view version.
sure thing. So as you said, my background is in documentary filmmaking. The reason for that is because I really love that a good documentary film will make you see the world in a different way, will make you really empathize with somebody whose shoes you may have never walked in. Uh, Essentially humanizes a lot of these sort of headline stories that we might see in the news, and it makes us care. And that's why I was drawn to documentary filmmaking. However, in 15 years working as a filmmaker, traveling the world, I had stories in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, and I was more recently at NBC for 5 years as a senior producer there. I was still very much a closeted entrepreneur the whole time where I loved what I did, but I was like, man, one day I'm not going to have a boss. I'm not going to need to ask for a raise. There was actually a moment at NBC where my last raise took over a year to negotiate. And I was just telling myself, I never want to spend this time and energy again having to ask for more money to do what I love. And at the same time, not just like having money, but be able to make my own decisions, not having to ask permission, all of these things that as entrepreneurs we love, the freedom that the reason why we built our businesses is typically around having that personal time freedom and money freedom, not have to ask anyone for a raise. And so there came a time where I needed to step out of that comfort zone and kind of an if not now, when moment. At the same time, I knew that because I loved entrepreneurship for myself, I also loved just marketing in general. I also loved seeing how businesses grew, how they sold, why people buy, like a lot of biopsychology and neuroscience. Like I love nerding out on all that stuff. And so, really, what I did was I brought together this background in personal, intimate storytelling and combined it with marketing because at the end of the day, we buy from humans, right? People buy from people. People buy so much more now based on the values that they align with, not just the promise of the result that you are giving. And so I saw the need in the marketplace because essentially I came into the online space, which is typically where I operate in digital marketing. And I started signing up for things and, lead magnets, if you're familiar with that, the free this, the free that. And I started signing up for them and getting people in my inbox. I was like, who is this person? I don't remember what I did. I don't what I signed up for. And the massive gap in the marketplace is just that, is that we are basically doing a terrible job of connecting with people in that first moment that they sign up or that they come into our social presence or our website or whatever it is. Or, you said you checked out my LinkedIn, my Instagram. This is what people are doing the first moment they meet us because they're checking us out in the privacy of their own time and space. And if we're not creating an impactful, strong, personal connection at that very moment, we're wasting a lot of time and resources because then we're basically condemned to having to build that trust in that relationship over 7 hours of content, which is what David Priestley talks about, this 7, 6, 12 months of continuously showing up in order to have people understand who we are. And people buy who we are so much more than they buy what we're actually selling.
Okay, you've unpacked quite a lot there. And I think it's always interesting looking at people's backstories because the whole time that you were in your roles in these various companies, and you've worked at all of the big names. I mean, I don't know what else there was for you other than going into entrepreneurship. But you pretty much were an entrepreneur the whole time. You had to manage teams, you had to manage expectations, you had to manage budgets. You had wins and fails, I'm sure, lots of them. So you'd already had a couple of bruises, I'm sure, throughout that process. So I think your background sort of set you up to be ready for entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of people are waiting for the right time to do it. Was there a right time for you to do it?
I think it's kind of like having a kid where you either do it when you're not ready or you're not going to have a child, which is okay. But I think for me, the right time was, not to go into too much detail. My time at NBC had been really perfect. And then I had not a great relationship with my last boss. We kind of butted heads a little bit, in part because I'm not a yes woman. I, question things. I have my own opinions about things. And if you're looking to just minimize friction, that's not somebody that you necessarily want on your team. And it wasn't a good fit at the end, if I'm being honest. And so it was a moment where I had to ask myself, like, do I continue on? I negotiated that massive raise for about a year. I had lots of benefits at NBC. I worked out of 30. I had a lot of freedom to do the stories that I wanted to do, but it wasn't my dream life after a while. And so I'm sorry, you have to be willing to take risks. So the opposite of being risk averse. And I have to say, there's been a shift for me. It's becoming an entrepreneur, because in the beginning, I'm so passionate about it that I used to talk to people about it all the time and say, you have a business, and if somebody was unhappy at their job, I was like, you should just start your own business, and you could do this and you could do that, and you could make it, base it online, and you could teach people what you do and all of these things. And nowadays I don't do that anymore, in large part because I feel like it takes so much work to make a business and there's so much to it, right? And a lot of it is mindset. A lot of it is being able to have the grit to stick with it when it doesn't work. It's a lot of consistency. It's a lot of delayed gratification. It's a lot of late nights and early mornings. And I think there's a lot of that foundational phase that most people don't survive, and they go back to what they know, and which is totally fine. Not everyone is cut out for this. And so hopefully that answers your question. I actually just recently on my podcast, Empire Secrets, my last episode, which dropped today, was about, would I do this again if I knew how much work it was? And as much as I love what I do, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm glad I didn't know how hard it was, but now I understand that it's not for everyone. I'm so glad, obviously, that I did it. I'm so glad I stuck with it and have achieved success doing it. But it's not an easy road. If it were, everybody would be a millionaire.
Absolutely. So I too am the product of a shitty boss. So I started my own business because I thought, screw you guys, I can do this way better and I'll create a better work environment. But you made a couple of really good points there as well in terms of, is this for everybody? Nope. And I was the same thing. Starting a business. Yay. Bah, 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 bah.
Right.
And now I'm like, if I'd have stayed there, I'd be earning way more money than I am now. But there are lots of benefits in terms of running your own business, and you've got that control. So you're in control of your own destiny. Now, let's go back to documentaries and brand videos, because I want to know, what is more difficult, doing a documentary, a brand video? Because people who are having documentaries on them, generally something bad's going on, or there's a very clear story. And I feel that a lot of people, if they're going to get a brand video done, don't have a compelling story yet. What's more difficult, and how do you deal with that?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question or have ever really thought about it, in part, Nicholas, because although they sound similar, and in fact, when I first started Brand Magnetic, I was calling them short documentaries, and people were like, why the heck would I ever do And so, it's one of those things that you learn. You have to call it something that people understand. In my world, we talk about mini docs all the time, and my peers know what that is, and they get it right away. Branded content, all of that. The people that I was speaking to are not from this world, and so that's why I call them brand videos. Which, I think unless you have a really awesome understanding of how powerful a brand is, it can feel like a name that doesn't actually carry the weight of the impact that it can have. And so, it's a love-hate relationship with the name Brand Videos. I've embraced it just because it's the easiest way to describe it. But going back to what you asked, so to me, documentaries they don't have a marketing purpose, right? And so to your point, you said not everybody's story is compelling, but at the end of the day, everybody has a story that can be compelling. And it's really all about seeing your story as not about yourself. So I always say your brand story, your brand video is not about you. You're just the story. But at the end of the day, it's about how your audience needs to feel when they watch it. It's all about them. And so what you're doing in the process, and I'm happy to sort of go into it a little bit, the framework that I use is really about understanding your audience deeply and being able to reverse engineer back into your story to understand what parts of your story and how to tell it in a way that causes feelings of trust. And so we can make anything compelling. We just have to know what is going to move the needle in the hearts and minds of the people that we want to speak to.
Yeah, and you bring up the point that everyone actually has a story to tell. And I suppose from a documentary perspective, even the most insignificant story, like you'll see a photograph of a one child shoe in the middle of a street, and we all know, oh dear, something bad has happened. And that is just some, incidental little image. The same thing can be done with a brand film or a brand video, where even the smallest thing in your life, like the special way that you roll up your croissants, or how you wake up early and you go to the fish market and you do this.
Yeah, there's beauty in
there's always something, and people forget that every part of their life has actually got some little magic to it. And I love that they've got the opportunity with you, with somebody who's got the skills to sort of draw that out to them. So that's really exciting. Talk to me about some of the most fun brand videos that you've had opportunity to work on.
Oh man. It's going to sound really cliche to answer your question this way, but they're all fun. A quirk or I think the fun part is really the process, Nicholas, is like, some people have a very sort of clear narrative arc to their story. So there are actually two types of stories. There's an overcome story and a passion story. And depending on what you do, it's typically, so I work a lot with coaches and course creators, but I also work with folks who have like a fitness business or that sell like sporty skirts for hikers. That we just finished a brand video of one of my students that she's an e-commerce brand, right? And so not the typical person I work with. And so if you are helping somebody overcome something that you have gone through yourself, right? Typically, like I said, in the coaching, we'll have an overcome story. That's the type of story that you have. And most of the time, they're very clear on like, okay, this was my before, this is what happened, there's a turning point, and this is my after. And then at the end, we pivot to your mission, which is basically like, I can't help but do this now. Because your brand video is not a marketing video. There's no call to action. You're not selling anything. You're just talking about, this is my story, and this is why I do this. This is my drive, my personality, my mission, my vision. If you don't have that, which was my case because I was a filmmaker, but my audience are not filmmakers. I'm not helping you have a great career in documentary filmmaking. I'm helping you sell your services or your offer or your product so much better and faster by connecting with your future customers, by becoming the undeniable person that they think of when they think of your thing. And so a lot of those folks, again, without the overcome story, they have a passion story. And a passion story is a little bit different. We focus on what are your personality traits that your audience loves about you. In the case of my e-commerce student, we focused on why she created the brand, but very specifically hitting on the things that she knows her audiences love about the thing that she sells and the feeling that her product brings to them. That is like, if I can just have you pause there and just think about that. That's what we want. We want to evoke the feelings, not only that they feel before using your thing or before buying your thing, but also what they aspire to, like their desired transformation, if you will.
But I think the process that you've outlined there is important. And there are two takeaways that we need to look at. One is that it isn't a promotional video. You're not saying there's a
Great. Oh my gosh.
taggy
No.
on special at the end, down 10%. I think that's an extremely important aspect to it. And you talk about building trust and aspects like that. How do you see a brand video fitting into a client's potential customer journey? Say they want to do a promotional. I mean, that's one thing. They can take aspects or, stills or parts of the brand video. But talk to me, how do you sell this into a customer? How does somebody know they need a brand video?
Video. If they sell, they need a brand video, right? They're selling anything. Well, even folks who are building their personal brands, usually to sell something later, this is a great asset for them to have. It's also a forever asset, by the way. So unless you completely change what you're doing in your business or speaking to a completely different audience, or you dye your hair purple all of a sudden, and that's your new look, in which case like your brand video is going to look a little outdated, you can use your brand for years and years. It is like the biggest investment in a video investment. And the way it's used, it's top of funnel. So I'm not sure if your audience is there with that terminology, but it's basically when people come to see you, come to, check you out, whatever that looks like. So typically, if I hear about a podcast or if I hear about somebody's name, if I see a comment on Facebook or on social media and I'm like, wait, who is it? Let me check them out, right? We're doing this in the privacy of anonymity, in our own time, in our own space. We don't want to be talked to, right? We want to do our thing. Don't talk to me. Don't sell to me. I don't want to know yet. That's where your brand video shines, because that is the piece that essentially is going to make its mark on your audience. It's going to make them go on this emotional journey with you. It's going to make them remember who you are, remember your face, remember what you do, remember your values and why you do what you do, which is the most important thing. You have so many other opportunities in your other marketing to sell them, to show your authority, to show your credibility, to show whatever it is you're doing, how awesome your product is. You have 1,000 opportunities to do that everywhere else. But this moment, the moment that they come to you, which I call the instant trust test, which most of us fail, is when you're making your mark using your brand video. So your brand video lives on your email signature. It lives pinned on your social media profile so that everyone sees it as they land there. It lives on your homepage if you're the face of your brand. You're on your About Me page, which is the second most visited page on most websites. It lives on your sales page. Typically we have a section that's kind of like an About Me section, further down on the sales page, but it's there for a reason. And then there's all sorts of other ninja ways that we use the brand video. I teach about 30 different ways to use the brand video. To your point, the assets are there, which you can use for other things, but the story in and of itself is meant to connect with people who are just coming to you for the very first time.
So there are a whole bunch of opportunities to use this brand video. So I really like that. Now, you've spoken about a couple of processes here. If people want to speak to Mariana, who's got a whole bunch of Emmy Awards and has been nominated, a lot of people are going to feel a bit shy because, wait a minute, this is way above my pay grade. But I know I rather want somebody who's really good at what they do, because I've seen and I've made personally really bad brand videos as well, and a lot of them. What is the starting point? If they can't afford you necessarily in terms of starting out, do you have any resources that people can sort of check out first before they come to you, so they can say this is the right decision, or perhaps do it themselves if they're not in the States?
Yeah, absolutely, Nicholas. So I work with folks at all sorts of different levels. So don't be shy. Don't feel intimidated. I work with folks who are beginning their businesses. Typically, the best time to work with me is when you know what you sell, that you've sold it a few times at least, so you're not at the very beginning stages. I do have a very starter course if you're kind of at that stage and you're still just wanting to start thinking about your brand story. But a brand video is really best once you've hit a little bit of stride and you know who you serve and what their problems, you know them very, very well. And so I have a group cohort program called the Brand Video Accelerator. I work with folks there at all sorts of levels. And in that program, we work through what your story should be, what's the script supposed to be, what visuals, what emotional visuals, like we won't even have time to talk about those, but really we would use visuals to drive those feelings forward. They're not just to cover your video, if you will, not just to illustrate what you're saying, but to really drive emotions through your story. And then teach you how to film this on your phone and how to edit on your phone. So it's very, very simplified, so that you can have that impact without the price of a film crew or working with me directly. Although I'm in the program all the time, but there's less one-on-one time, obviously, in a group program. But anyway, so that's the Brand Video Accelerator. We're opening doors in late April. Not sure when this episode comes out, but either way, there is a resource that I'd love to share with you guys that really is just a way for you to get started. You can pick that up at brandmagnetic.com/cheat sheet. It's the ultimate cheat sheet for a brand story that converts. And otherwise on Instagram, I'm very accessible. Just reach out to me at Brand Magnetic. I love hearing from folks who have heard me on a podcast or have seen me teach and have just taken away something from that. I love hearing that. And I do follow up with everyone who reaches out. So please feel free to connect with me there.
And just mention your podcast again, because I did have it open here, but I've just closed it.
Yeah, no worries. So my podcast is called Empire Secrets of Digital Marketing, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, the last thing I just want to touch on is that this is something that AI can't do for you. So I think one of the differentiators in this space that we're in now, where there's so much automation, you can slap anything about your product into AI engines and out to come something quite passable. Telling your story is not something that you want to be generic. And that's where you need to speak to Mariana. So Mariana, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. And might have to be in touch for my own brand video as well.
That sounds exciting, Nicholas. For sure. And I'd be happy to help. And thank you for having me.